Ever since the Galileo's mission, a pretty definitive realization that there's an ocean underneath the ice of Europa. Europa has been the key destination for a big watery world where we might go search for habitability, maybe even inhabitation. An interesting new twist, however, came with the Cassini mission to Saturn. People were always intrigued by the idea of exotic life on Titan, and indeed we'll talk about that sort of exotic life in a few lectures. But nobody was prepared for what was found at one of the very small moons of Saturn, the moon Enceladus, which is only about 500 kilometers across. 500 kilometers across is about the size of that asteroid Vesta that we looked at. But unlike Vesta, Enceladus, when you looked at it with the Voyager spacecraft that flew by decades ago, it's very round. It's got a surface that is very icy, very shiny. It's one of the most reflective surfaces in the entire solar system. And it has a density of about 1.6 grams per centimeter cubed. What does this tell you? Well, icy on the outside, there must be rock on the inside to get that density up. So it's a structure that looks something like this. Io and Europa around Jupiter have a good excuse to have extra heating going on. They have that slight eccentricity that they cause each other, and that tugging from the two of them continues to squeeze one, expand the other, squeeze and expand, and that squeezing and expanding eventually dissipates as heat in the interior, leading to the incredibly volcanically active Io, and likely to a hotter than expected core in Europa and a nice big ocean. Enceladus is small. It has nothing tugging at it in its orbit. It really should be a cold, dead, frozen place, which is why when the Cassini spacecraft flew by and took images of Enceladus, and in particular took images looking back towards the sun and saw backlit images that looked something like this, everybody was surprised, mystified, and excited. Why surprised, mystified, and excited? Surprised because, well, what is this? These are, what you're seeing are plumes of predominantly dust is what you're seeing coming out of, you can see exactly where they're coming out of. They're coming out of these locations on Enceladus, and this turns out to be just at the south pole of Enceladus. Why would you get plumes of dust like this? Well, for the same reason that in comets you have plumes of dust. You have jets coming out that are entraining the dust and pulling it with it. What are those jets made out of? Well, speculation very quickly was that these must be water jets. Why would there be water jets? Well, it would happen if there were hot water down here below the surface. There were cracks, and just like a geyser here on Earth, you get the jetting out into space. The only problem with that possibility is that there's really no reason to think that there would be water down here at all. As I said before, there's no continuous heat source going on. There's no reason that the ice on Enceladus should not be completely frozen. There were alternatives that people suggested, is that maybe for some reason there were just some hot magmas that were coming close to the surface and heating up some of the ice here, and the ice was just blasting off straight from the surface without there being a liquid water portion. The fact that it really was liquid water came from the Cassini spacecraft again, which actually flew through some of these plumes, and the Galileo spacecraft has a mass spectrometer, we've talked a lot about mass spectrometers, has a mass spectrometer on it that simply collects the stuff that it goes through, and it actually collected material from these plumes. And what did it find? Remember again that the way the mass spectrometer works is it calculates the mass of the molecules hitting. The mass of the molecules hitting in this particular spectrometer, and because Cassini was flying by so fast, when the molecules hit, they would sometimes hit the walls of the container and break apart. So you have to look at the mass of the molecule and also the mass of the things that it might break into. And when you do that, you find things like water. There's definitely water in those plumes. There's water over here too, quite abundant. But one of the other very abundant things is ammonia. Ammonia is critical. Why is ammonia critical? Well, as I'll show you in a minute, we had already measured hot temperatures at the locations of these vents. If you take water and you put ammonia in it, ammonia acts like a very effective antifreeze. So at the temperatures that had been measured, with the amount of ammonia that was also measured, there would indeed be liquid water. This is essentially the first of the smoking guns that we're looking at a liquid water source region. What else is in this liquid water source region? Some of our favorite things. Methane, CO2, a lot of organics, things that have C2s and C3s and C4s and C6H6. All these things are presumably from more complex organic materials that were there and that were destroyed on the sides of the wall. This is a soup of organic material, methane, things that you could use for energy, things that you could use to create essential things like amino acids. Fairly astounding place. Let me show you where on Enceladus all of this is coming from. As I said before, it's the south pole of Enceladus. The south pole is right down through here. It's not coming from anywhere else, just that one little location spewing out. And those very localized geysers come from these stripes that you see through here. These sort of bluish stripes. They're not bluish in real life. This is a false color, enhanced. These have been called tiger stripes for no apparent reason. Well, except that they look like stripes and tigers have stripes. In addition to these tiger stripes down here, look at what's going on Enceladus. There's all sorts of cracks and grooves. Looks a little bit like Europa in many ways. There's craters up through here. So this is clearly old terrain up and through here. No craters at all down and through here. Very young terrain and recently resurfaced. Let's look at these cracks, which are where those plumes were coming from. Let's look at these cracks in the thermal infrared. Cassini also had a camera which could take infrared pictures, and in the infrared, anything that's hot is going to be glowing. And let's see how it looks. The background images you see here is the South Pole, and you can see some of these stripes. See these tiger stripes go like this and go like this. There's a tiger stripe, there's a tiger stripe, there's a tiger stripe up there. Little cracks in like that. And the reddish colors are places where it's hot. Where is it hot? Directly on these tiger stripes. Directly. These cracks, these stripes that you see, these locations where these geysers are coming out are physically hot. And they're physically hot enough that with that addition of ammonia, it is clear that there's liquid underneath there. I said that was the first smoking gun. Let me give you one more smoking gun. The second smoking gun came with gravity data. Remember, we've talked about gravity data quite a bit now. Cassini spacecraft flew by the south pole of Enceladus and it measured the gravitational pull during that flyby. And in a detailed analysis of what it found a region underneath. They found that there was an ice shell, and there was a region underneath the ice shell that was slightly more dense than ice. Now, underneath that, there's of course rock, which is a lot more dense than ice, but it was that slightly more dense than ice component that was the important part. What is slightly more dense than ice? Water. You know that because ice floats on top of water. It's a strange thing. Most liquids, when you freeze them, the solid form is more dense and the solid form would sink, but water is the exception, and that's why ice floats. The NASA press release / artist conception of what all this looks like is something like this. There is ice, an ice shell on Enceladus that's something like this thick all the way around. There's a rocky core on the inside, and right here at about this depth, there is a pocket of water sandwiched between the rock and the ice. And then there are cracks going out to the surface where you have these plumes coming up like that. Okay. I'm going to let you finish, younger me, but I have to tell you something that we have figured out since when you first recorded this video. It is not a pocket of water at the south pole of Enceladus. It's a global ocean. How did people figure this out? It was actually a very interesting, clever way to do it, which is that because Enceladus is going around Saturn in a slightly eccentric orbit, that means it's moving a little bit faster when it's closer to Saturn. It's a little bit slower when it's further away from Saturn. And because it is tidally squeezed, just like Europa is being tidally squeezed, that is forcing the shape to rock back and forth. It rocks back and forth, and you can calculate how much it should rock back and forth as it goes around Saturn if it were a solid body. And it is rocking too much. Why is it rocking too much? It is because there's a shell of ice that is utterly disconnected from the rock underneath it, and it is allowing it to wobble back and forth even more. That shows that there has to be a completely global ocean inside of Enceladus. The rest of the discussion is all still true, but just keep in mind that it is not a pocket. It is a full global ocean that well might be a habitable environment. This is interesting news. There is water in contact with rock. Remember, as we discussed with Europa, that is the critical thing. If you just had water, a little water layer stuck inside here, water surrounded by water, it would be very hard to have anything interesting chemically going on. Water with rock, you might well have more interesting chemistry going on. And in fact, we know that we do because we've seen the complex organic molecules or at least we've seen evidence of the complex organic molecules that have been formed. I think it's safe to say that this ocean on Enceladus fits all of our criteria for habitability. It has chemical energy sources. It has carbon for building complex molecules. It is another habitable zone in our solar system. Is it inhabited? Well, then you start to wonder about things like, how long has this liquid water been here? As I said at the beginning, nobody expected there to be plumes on Enceladus because nobody expected there to be liquid water, because everybody expected the ocean of the ice of Enceladus to be completely frozen out. Why is it not frozen out? It's still unclear why it's not frozen out. People have ideas. Maybe the ideas are correct. One of the ideas is that Enceladus recently was in a much higher eccentricity phase of its orbit, and when I say things like recently, I mean millions of years ago. But then millions of years ago, it was eccentric, and so heat was being pumped into this interior, and it melted some, and now we're just seeing the very last remnants of that ocean that will freeze out soon. If that's the case, this has not been around for a very long time, and you could argue that life, even though it's a habitable location, life might not be very likely. Of course, that argument's a tough one because we have zero idea of how long it actually takes for life to begin if we had a soup with all the right ingredients in it. So, is it inhabited? In my opinion, it's a long shot. I don't think there's enough time, but I will be the first to admit that is an opinion. The opinion about how long it takes for life is really without much basis. So you're free to argue that this is something that could well be inhabited. If it is inhabited, it's, in some ways, it's one of the easier things to go explore. All you gotta do is go take another spacecraft and fly through these plumes, and now don't stick it through a mass spectrometer, collect the stuff, put it in a can, bring it back to the Earth, see what's there. What are you gonna find? Are you gonna find amino acids like we have on the Earth? Are you gonna have actual little microbes jetting out into space? Maybe. You can imagine the host of problems that those possibilities would cause with trying to do a sample return. You would have to have the most incredibly safe sample return that you could imagine to prevent the possibility of contamination onto the Earth. But if you did that, it would be an interesting thing. The reason it would be so interesting is because while I've argued that Earth and Mars have clearly exchanged material, and so finding life on Mars potentially related to life on Earth might not tell you very much about how life starts, finding something way out of Enceladus, well, it's not impossible to transfer material from Earth to Enceladus. It's just not very likely. If you found something out here, it would likely be something that started out there, a second genesis of life, as people like to say. Is it likely? I don't think so. I think you're much better off going to a place like Europa, which has had liquid water in contact with rock, an abundant heat source for a long period of time. But this is easier to get to. It's spewing material out through there. Europa might keep it all locked up underneath. So maybe